previous lecture, which was a matter of introducing the course to you. As I said last time, discourse analysis will enable us to reveal, to make it clear, it means, to reveal, to make it clear, to make it seen by people, not hidden, to take the idea which is not understood from the deepest bottom of the text and put it on the surface to be seen by everybody, by the reader who is educated and the reader who could be considered normal in his level with regard to education. Discourse analysis will enable to reveal the hidden motivations, and I concentrate on the word motivations because when I say something, I am motivated to say that thing in that way and to say that thing even. Why I say good morning with a smile, and I might say good morning in this way. In the first case, I have a motivation for that, and in the second case, I also have another motivation. In the first case, I might have a motivation, for example, that this person with whom I'm talking is very dear to me, and I want to show him our intimate relation, our good relation. So this is the motivation that made me say good morning in that good way, and in another way I might say good morning, and even in the second way I have another motivation that I just want also to show the interlocutor, the person with whom I'm talking, that I'm not very much interested in our relation. There is something wrong between me and him. So I have a motivation. Sometimes when I write something, I'm motivated. Even when I think to write, I have to have something in my mind. So I'm motivated by something in order to write something. The expert, the linguist, has a role which is revealing that motivation. Why? For example, that writer, for example, shows the word rose, but he didn't choose, for example, the word flower in a given text. Why he shows the word occupation, but in another text he might write colonization. Why I might say, for example, let me give you other examples. Why I might say pain, the object that we use in order to bring water from the well, or why I do say in another context bucket, or why I might say he died, somebody, or I might say passed away. So I mean the choice I have just shown indeed is motivated by something, and even the way I write or the way I say is to be motivated by something. Discourse analysis will enable to reveal the hidden motivations behind a text. So it could be a text, or behind the choice of a particular method of research to interpret that text. Discourse analysis is meant to provide a higher awareness of the hidden motivations in others and in ourselves, and therefore enable us to solve concrete problem by making us ask ontological and epistemological questions. These two terms are very much important. As new students to the field, you have to know them. It is not enough to know their meanings, but you must also be able to use them, because we are talking about discourse analysis. Why the writer G or anybody has the writer of the text has chosen the word ontological or epistemological, why he chose these words but not other words? Of course he has his own reasons, his own motivations. These words are the words that can convey what he wants or what he wants, but if he replace them by other synonyms means words that have the same meanings, but they are not these words. Indeed, he has his own motivations, that we might have other words that have the same meaning but not the exact meaning. Because in general in linguistics we say we do not have absolute synonymy. In other words, it's impossible to find two words that have the same meaning 100%. So what is the motivation? What is the reason standing behind choosing these two words is also part of discourse analysis. Though critical thinking about the analysis of texts is as ancient as mankind, though critical thinking, analyzing about the analysis of a text, or texts, is as ancient as mankind, discourse analysis is perceived as the product of post-modern period. See, we have old, middle, modern, and even we have postmodern, after modern, postmodern. Most of the people till now think that though critical thinking about the analysis of text is an ancient as mankind, very old. Discourse analysis started so many years ago, hundreds of years ago, but in general, discourse analysis is perceived as the product, a new subject, a new topic, a new field of study that is found only in the post-modern period. So it's perceived, is seen as the product of post-modern period. Postmodern, I have explained it. Post is pre, modern, another word, postmodern, after modern period. In Arabic we call it حداثة, just to make it clearer. عصر الحداثة, for example. Discourse analysis. From today on, we might not say discourse analysis, but instead we might choose the acronym DA. We might choose the acronym DA. D means discourse and A means analysis. And by the way, it is very much also important for you to know that sometimes when we say a word in discourse analysis with the capital, it might have a meaning which differs from the same word if it is initiated by a small letter. For example, I might say conversation. If it is with the small c, it might mean something different from if it is considered a word which is initiated by the capital D, by the capital C. So conversation with capital C, it might have another meaning. Conversation with a small c, it might mean a conversation between two persons, Ahmed and Ali, for example. But if I said conversation with the capital C, it might mean not only a dialogue or a negotiation or discussion, conversation between two people or two persons, it might be between two ideas, two races, two values. For example, I might say the conversation between, for example, a black American and white American. It is something which goes behind a talk between two people. It is something related to history. So it is a dialogue or a conversation started at least 300 years ago between these two concepts, being the one who belongs to that group or to that group in general. So conversation with capital C, it might have a meaning which differs totally from the meaning of conversation if it is with the small letter C. So discourse analysis, DA, is a modern discipline. Notice, is a modern discipline. And we have said that many people think that discourse analysis, though analyzing texts, let me say, had been found hundreds of years ago, if not thousands, but most of the people still perceive discourse analysis as something very new, and it is related to post-modern period. Discourse analysis, DA, is a modern discipline of the social sciences. So it has something to do with social sciences, especially sociolinguistics. I would like you to concentrate on this with sociolinguistics. Sociolinguistics is the field that correlated between something social and something linguistic. The relation between language and society. To a great extent, the way we speak, the way we write, has something to do with the society we live in. So discourse analysis is a modern discipline of the social sciences that covers a wide variety of different sociolinguistic approaches. This word is very much important. Sociolinguistic approaches. It refers to discourse analysis, of course. It aims to study and analyze the use of discourse in at least one of the three ways stated above, and more often than not, all of them at once. Analysis of discourse looks not only at the basic level of what is said, but takes into consideration the surrounding social and historical context. Let me make this point clearer. The word sociolinguistics is very much important to this field. Once we want to analyze a text, a talk, we couldn't analyze a given talk, a given text, being isolated from the context, from the social context, from the historical context in which it is written or it is said. So, the context, the social context, the historical context, both of them are very much important to the way I write. And the way I write, the way I speak is also linked to the historical and social context in which the text is written or in which a given sentence or a given talk is said. So, if I want to analyze a text, I have to have in my mind, I have to take into consideration the surrounding social and historical context. Because sometimes, what decides something to be correct, what decides something to be wrong, not you, but the society. Because sometimes what I do right here could be seen as something so beautiful. But the same text, if it is written in another social and historical context, it might be rejected. It might be seen something odd, unexpected. So, the social and historical context where the text is written or said are very much important to our field of study, which is discourse analysis. So, analysis of discourse looks not only at the basic level of what is said, but taken into consideration the surrounding social and historical context. Let me make it clearer. If, for example, you are listening to a conversation between a native Indian and another American. Now, if you just want to analyze what you hear without taking into consideration the long history between those people, native Indians or Native Americans and white Americans, if you do not take into consideration the historical relation between them, the social context where they do live in, you wouldn't be able to understand the conversation you are listening to. So, if you want to analyze the conversation, you have to take into consideration the context, the social context and the historical context where that conversation is taking place or where that text and when that text is written. I hope that this point is very much clear for you. Let me give you this good example. Or let me make it clearer for you. If I write a text For example, in 1910, and I am an Arab, and I want to write about rich people who were in my country, for example, Jordan, at that period of time. Or if I want to talk about the Turkish people, Ottoman Emperor, if I want to talk about that period of time, Ottomans, who were in our countries almost 80 years ago, or the British who were here in my country, for example, Jordan. As an Arab, as a Jordanian, I might write the word occupation to describe the existence of those people at that time. But if a British person is talking about the same thing and he lives in England, he wouldn't say occupation, he would say colonization. So the choice of the word depends on my knowledge, my awareness to the historical and social context. If I am an Arab, I would use occupation, for example, to describe the same event, the same thing. And the word colonization might be used by a European person in order not to give a negative concept, a negative meaning to their being in our countries, for example, 80 years ago. So, making the distinction between whether a person is described as colonization, of course colonizer in this case, or occupation, is something DA would look at whilst considering the implications of each term. The implications means what? Colonization, it has some implications. Occupation, it has other implications. So I would take into consideration all of these words, making the distinction between whether a person is described as a colonizer or he is the one who is occupied instead of colonized is something DA would look at. For example, an Indian is or was occupied by the British 80 years ago. But if a British wants to say the same thing, he would say colonized, because it doesn't have that negative meaning. So the use of words are very much important, and it is part of our analysis to the text. Why I use the word rose in a given text, in another text I might say flower. So I have something in my mind. Why I might say somebody died, and I might say in another context somebody has passed away. It has another meaning as well. So making the distinction between whether, okay, I have talked about to expand. Occupation is a term that brings negative connotations, as I have said. Occupation is a term that brings negative connotations of evil and damaging, whereas colonization has positive connotations of helping others to develop themselves. And because of so, I have said, if an Indian wrote about the period where British were in India, he would say occupation. But if a British person wants to write about the same period, he would say colonization. So the social context is very much important, and the historical event is or period is very much important as well. Whereas colonization has positive connotations of helping others to develop themselves. So one term is looked upon, one term, occupation or colonization, upon a lot more favorably than the other. And this is what a discourse analyst would consider, as well as looking at the relationship of these terms with a widely used term. In other words, it is not enough to deal with the word itself. You have to analyze it in relation to other words in a wider scope, a wider, let me say, domain. So discourse analyst would consider as well, he will keep in mind, will take into consideration as well as looking at the relationship of these terms with a widely used term. Discourse analysts will look at any given text, and that just means anything that communicates a message, and particularly how that message constructs a social reality or a view of the world, In other words, all of these things are to be considered once you intend to analyze a conversation or to analyze a text. You have to consider the social context, and you have to consider the historical context. The social context is very much important, because even in languages, by the way, you couldn't obtain a language, you couldn't understand a given dialect unless it is studied in its social context. Let me explain it in another way. Everybody might say, I speak Arabic. Everybody might speak English. In England, English, Arabic in our world. But Arabic language, as a language, has other dialects. In discourse analysis, we call these dialects sometimes social languages. And what I mean by social languages? It is Arabic, yes. But the way I speak with my friends differs from the way I do speak with my father and mother. So, I might say in this context that I have two social languages. One is used with my father and mother, where respect is to be shown, where you are very much cautious of choosing the best words, where you want to show an identity to you, not an identity whether you are Ahmed or Ali or Maryam or Fatima, no. Identity, what and how you like your father and mother to perceive you, to see you. You like to appear as clever, as nice, as good. So the language you use, the dialect, the way you speak, the way you choose, is to be chosen while you have into consideration these factors, these motives that I have just talked about, these motivations. I'm motivated to use that way of speech with my father and mother because I want them to see me as a clever person, educated, nice. Now, if I leave the house and I meet some of my friends, I will shift. This is what we call code switch. You shift the dialect, the way you use. With my friends, I will start using another social language. With my friends, the motivations I have differs from the motivations I do have when I was talking to my father and mother. The motivations here are the following. To show my friends that, if, for example, especially if you are a teenager, I am a man. I am tough. I am strong. I can play football. So you will use a language that will help you appear to them in this way. You are not meant to appear as clever or educated to them. As a teenager, I'm strong. I can play football. So you will speak in a way that can help you appear in this way. This is the motivation. And this is what we mean by social language. If now I'm a student at the university, when I talk to my prof, I will speak in a way, this is the social language, which shows him my respect to him. He's my superior, I'm his student. So I couldn't speak with him in the way that I do speak with my friends. This is what I mean. That I couldn't, this means another social language is to be used because you couldn't. With your friends you can, but eventually use that social language. Discourse analysts will look at any given text, and this just means anything that communicates a message, and particularly how that message constructs a social reality or a view of the world. and I would like to thank you at the end of this lecture. Thank you so much. في